Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given. This podcast episode discusses the details of domestic violence. If this episode becomes triggering while you are listening, practice self-care and turn off the episode. If you need to talk to someone, 1-800-799-7233. All the links are provided in the show notes.
Hi, everyone. This is Brenda J. Welcome to Real People, Real Voices, where people get to have a voice, and some for the first time. These are mini podcasts that focus on healing. I am so excited. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today we have Brian on the podcast, who is a domestic and narcissistic abuse survivor. We are so thankful that Brian is brave enough to share his story. He's the first man that has been willing to do so, and we hope it brings healing to our listeners and encourages more men to have a voice. We know that it is not only women that are affected. So welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, this is Karen. Nice to meet you.
Yes, likewise. Thank you.
Yes. So if you want to start out and tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, my brother and I were heavily abused physically, mentally, emotionally growing up, and we thought it was normal. We would get punished for going so much as going against the grain of what my mother's idea of things were. We once got grounded for an entire summer because we accidentally broke a figurine of hers. And we grew up thinking that this was normal behavior. She neglected us very much so. I just now got braces on my teeth because she never did. And things really came to a head after I got married to my lovely wife, Ruth. She physically struck me in front of her, and I have a scar from that, from one of her rings hitting me. So it was very much an eye-opener. And Ruth, who is a registered nurse, knows about these sorts of things. She sat down and said, Brian, I think your mom might be having some mental type issues. So I did some investigation on my own, and she fits the profile of a narcissist with borderline features. And the couple of times I tried to approach my mother about it, she accused me of psychoanalyzing her and that it wasn't going anywhere. I offered counseling. She said no. And just recently, she accused me of being an attention seeker. And what did she say exactly? I was feeling sorry for myself, and I should only post good stuff on Facebook. I should leave my feelings out of things. Mm-hmm. So I blocked her, and I've been feeling much better ever since.
So
that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. So you kind of have had to put boundaries into place, sounds like.
Yeah, my therapist, my spiritual director, my wife, and I, we all agreed that, definite boundaries need to be set into place because at this point in her life, she's not going to change. And she's always going to try to belittle me and make me look small. I'll tell you a quick story about that. When my grandmother was dying, her mom was dying, we drove into New Jersey to see her one last time before she left. And my wife was with me, and I was wearing a Superman t-shirt because I'm a huge Superman fan, right? So I come in to the room. Mom had been drinking wine. She has a bit of a liking to that sort of thing. And the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "Oh, Superman, my ass." And I turned around and walked out. And it took me about 10 minutes to regain my composure.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I was going to ask the question, how did you get out? But you already explained all that. So yesterday I was reading some things, and we have to change the conversation around family. Harmful projections like, but she's your mom, or but he's your dad, cause further harm. A trauma-informed approach is saying that must be incredibly confusing, that your key abuser was someone that was meant to keep you safe. And then, I wish estrangement didn't have to be a thing for so many people. I wish instead of having to protect yourself from people and to keep you safe, each person has the same revelation that they need help. This could restore so many families and break so many generational cycles. So it's just a really, it's a really tough pill to swallow when it is your family. But healing and not being abused is just critical.
Yeah, I came to 3 revelations this week. Is that this wasn't a choice that I made. She made this choice when she chose to treat me in this way, and the way a mother should not be treating her child. And I don't owe my mom anything at this point. I've tried to be nice. I tried to be the good Catholic sort of, honor thy mother means this and that and the other thing. And my marriage has to come first. And that's, I had to lay down the law this week about that. It was just not an easy thing to do, but I have faith I made the right decision. And thirdly, I believe that this is a generational thing. I'm sure my mother was abused as well, but she will never own up to it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like she's in a place where she wants to receive that or, take any ownership of that.
Right, and you can't enable the abuse either, and that's what I did. I enabled it.
I was in the same boat. I tried to keep the peace. I thought, well, it'll be okay. A little bit of abuse, and then just take it with a smile, offer it up, et cetera, et cetera. No, you are not meant to offer up that sort of. You are meant to thrive and to be productive and to be your best self for your spouse, your friends, and your church, and for God, really.
Yeah.
And you can't be your best self if you're constantly getting squashed and made to feel like you're 2 foot small.
Right.
Yeah, maybe this will give her time to work on herself, and once you're healed, maybe then later on that can happen.
I am not optimistic. I will be honest with you, ladies.
Yeah, I know. All right.
Did you struggle with a narcissistic or abusive tendencies in your own life after getting out of that relationship?
The first 2 years of my marriage, yes, I did, because I was adapting to the new normal. My lovely wife, if she is listening to this, and I'm sure she will, she has the patience of Job and the subtlety of a sledgehammer. So thankfully, she's exactly what I needed with things. She was definitely open enough to say, Brian, this is not okay, and et cetera, et cetera. I knew that something had to be done. She laid down the ultimatum, get help or get out. And so I wisely chose the get help option.
Oh, that's great, though, that you chose that option.
So what have you done to heal from the abuse?
What haven't I done is a better question. I've utilized every avenue I possibly could. I have a therapist. I have a shrink. I have a spiritual director. I have friends and family that are in both the Lutheran Church and the Catholic Church. So, and of course, my wife and my best friend Stevie has been my go-to guy for things as well, because he's pretty much the only person that stuck around before and after I moved out. He saw the abuse and he saw how mom treated me, and this is just something that he was like, yeah, that's unacceptable. I was like, yeah.
So do you have siblings, and do your...
Yeah, I have an older brother that I sort of talk to. It's sporadic here and there. We don't really we have conversations, but we don't talk about mom at all.
I was going to say, I wonder why.
Topic.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, that makes it hard.
Yeah, he hasn't been home to see her since 1998. That should tell you everything.
Yeah.
Wow. How have you persevered and overcome in your life now and used what you've learned for good to encourage our listeners?
Well, if I could tell your listeners one thing, it's, you might feel like Sisyphus rolling the boulder up the hill. You're not. It's not. If you keep pushing it, it's not going to roll back down and hit you. It's going to feel like that at times. It's definitely a long, hard fight, for lack of a better word, but it's definitely doable. God has seen fit to show me his mercy, and that things have been better spiritually since I've gotten out. I do have one suicide attempt to my name. I don't feel ashamed to share that with you ladies, and that was really the wake-up call spiritually for things. And now I'm currently studying to be a spiritual director, hopefully try to help some folks that are in the same boat. And my Facebook posts, Miss Brenda has read quite a few of them, and she's like, yeah, that's good stuff, very helpful. And I've joined, and I'm a member of several groups that have similar things going on. So I try to approach things from all angles. I'm never going to be like 100%. Oh yeah, it's over. It's this is ingrained in my reality. It's part of who I am. But if I can turn this negative into a positive,
right.
Praise God for that. And I'm certainly doing my best.
Yeah. Sounds like you're taking the steps to heal, and that's when God uses it. That's what our hope is. I mean, that's why we named our podcast Hanging On to Hope, because once you get to that point, I mean, healing is an ongoing process, but when you start getting some healing, you start seeing the hope that you don't see at first when you're so overwhelmed. But then when you start getting that healing, you want that for others too.
Yes.
For me, it's like, you just like hearing where you're at and the pain that you're going through. It's like, I know you will continue to heal, and I know that will come, but you've already taken a lot of big steps.
Yeah. I can just feel the pain in my spirit when you talk, and I'm just going to be praying. And the good thing is as you heal, you'll still have that pain and you'll still feel that pain, but you'll also feel so much healing. And I can't even put words to, because it's almost a spiritual thing. But when your soul begins to be healed, you feel the pain, but you also just feel God, and you feel that healing, and it feels so good.
May I share something with you, since you mentioned healing of the soul and so on?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So I'm also an Iraq war veteran on top of everything else that's been going on.
Wow.
And I went through a program called Reboot. It's spiritual trauma healing and things. And one of the terms from that program is wounds of the soul. That's what trauma does to you. It wounds your soul.
Mm-hmm.
So, and strangely enough, during that program, I talked more about mom than I did my war experience. So go figure, right?
Wow.
And it was...
See the connection there.
Well, in the last podcast, one of the positive things she talked about is just changing your mindset from being a victim to a survivor. So now you're a survivor. We're changing that right now. I'm a survivor. You're a survivor. And that's a positive change to become that. So I'm excited for you to heal. I really am. And we will definitely keep you in our prayers. And I just wanted to thank you so much for being on our podcast. You're an inspiration and a voice for all men that have been through abuse. And our hope is that this will encourage other men to heal and not to repeat past patterns of being in abusive relationships. And also to recognize the red flags and heal and be in healthy relationships. God calls us to love one another, and clearly abuse is not love. So we just wanted to thank you again for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story and being brave and just continuing that process. You're an inspiration.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Brian's podcast was truly inspiring. Our next podcast is Danielle. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Brenda J. Today we have Danielle on the show. She is a domestic, verbal, and sexual abuse survivor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Danielle. This is Karen. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Can you tell us a little of your story and how you were abused?
Yeah, so I have been a victim of abuse really all of my life until about now. Sexually, I think that was a big one for me. I was abused by my grandfather growing up, then got abused by my first spouse, which was really devastating for me because we had been together since we were little kids. And I think that's something that really rocked my world. Was I didn't know that was not normal, I think. And then again, I've been abused by some boyfriends sexually as well. And it is maybe the most demeaning type of abuse for me. I think that's probably caused me to suffer the most as far as self-esteem and just feeling really unworthy. And I think really ugly, which I know is a lie, but I think those are things that have taken me a really long time to combat. And just big trust issues from that, giving yourself over somebody sexually is kind of the biggest decision you make. And having that force taken from you is wrong. And it's always wrong. It took me a while to really be able to verbalize that. I know when I was getting abused the first time in a marriage, I went to people, and because we were both in church, it wasn't really something that anybody wanted to talk about with me or address.
So it was in the church.
Yeah. We were in church together. We were both leaders. And I think that made it almost harder because I went to them like, something's wrong. This is what's going on. And it just was like so shocking for them that they didn't even know how to help me.
Right.
And that was really hard because I had grown up in that church. So I think now the difference is I've had this happen to me again, and things to do right away has changed, right? Knowing it's wrong and that all the emotions you feel are real.
Yeah, there's such pain attached to sexual abuse.
It's a deep pain because it's a shame where you don't want to tell anybody.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that's interesting about this is no matter what age you are or what stage you're at in life or how smart, people really do ask similar questions of, where did it happen? How did it happen? Why didn't you do something? And you feel so stupid and small for something that wasn't your fault. And the fact is, you don't know how you're going to act in a moment of having a gun to your head or being pinned down or being locked in a room. I think people would like to think they would do one thing, but you go into survival mode. Right. And all you can think about is, how do I get out of this? Right. So it makes it a very different reality. And I think using my voice now to let people know that really is what's going through people's minds. I feel like I'm a very smart, capable person. But at the end of the day, I know this last time for me, I was just thinking, how do I get out alive?
Yeah.
How do I get out of this room and get home to my kids? And that's a reality. I think it's so scary because it's something you hope you never have to face in life. And so sexual abuse for me is something that it's a very hard situation to get out of too. Verbal abuse, I mean, I don't know if there could be something that will shake you more to your core. I know for me, this is something where I got extremely abused verbally to the point of, you're nothing, getting called curse words frequently. Nothing I did was correct. I was ugly. Nobody wanted me. I mean, I can think of every lie from the pit of hell, right? And words have weight. And I think that's something to remember in this, where you're having somebody say all these things over you and you got to break them off. And that's hard. And I know that this is probably most of the time where I went into my freeze mode would be with verbal abuse. And still to this day, if somebody starts going down this path with me where they're just kind of yelling things and what feels like a prosecution, I'm like, I freeze. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I know this isn't healthy. And that's, I think, a good point too, of listening to your body in this. Verbal abuse, your body feels it and it kind of just feels yucky and it starts to shut down typically. Wow. And this is something where it's hard to get out of because it's hard to explain. So this is one of those abuses that I think if you're married, what do you say to somebody? Somebody talks to me rude or my husband's mean to me. People are like, oh yeah, well, he has a temper. And we make excuses for why this is okay. Right. It is not okay for people to demean you with words.
Right.
It does have
Sometimes
power.
It's not even words too. It can be looks or it can be subtle, very covert, but it's still being communicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remember that God's used every good word over you. So somebody that's bringing words that are bad and evil, they are exposing their heart as well. And they do not have something good for you ahead. That is not their intent. So I do think words show intent. Mm-hmm. And it is a cue for you, whether or not people are buying in and believing it. Don't ever sit there and let yourself be called these names. I think if I could have done something differently, as soon as I heard those the first time, or the crazy text messages, I think this is another one of the verbal abuses, is getting insane text messages from a boyfriend or a spouse is weird. That is not normal. It is abusive. You should not be reading things that make you shudder or feel like, am I going to live today? Yeah. Or how do I calm this person down? Again, these are things that you don't need to be doing in a relationship. And I think it's a very early on sign of abuse and something that I did not catch because I thought, wow, I must have really done something wrong. Yeah. And I wanted to place the blame on myself. And I know better now, but receiving text messages that are controlling, demeaning abuse, that is not normal. And then I just think overall living with somebody like this creates, your domestic violence issues of just, I've been pushed and shoved before. That's something I haven't experienced as much as other people. I will say that whatever somebody throws me, I can react pretty well on that one and get out. Somebody lays a hand on me, it's a little different. For me, that's something that I will run from. But verbal abuse and sexual is more of a freezing thing to me because it's so surreal. Mm-hmm. I can't believe somebody's doing that. I think sometimes somebody hitting you can be more obvious in that you're just literally seeing it. Like they just hit me. Everybody knows.
Right. I think emotional and verbal abuse it is hard to pinpoint because, especially in a marriage and especially if you're both Christians, it can be very, very confusing. I feel like I lived in a lot of confusion for a lot of years because you're just like, well, I must be a really bad person. You just think you really believe that, well, it must just be, I'll be me.
Yeah. It's good to cut off that verbal abuse right away. You're exactly right. Because I just let him say it. And then years later, it still kind of attacks you in your mind. That subtle voice, you think those things about yourself, even though you thought you were ignoring them. So, what are some of the other things that you've done to heal besides what you said already?
Just leaning into Jesus as much as I could. I think one of the things I did was go to friends that I knew had amazing relationships with God and asking, who do they know that helped them grow? I've always felt very close to God, and I feel very blessed to never have been in a situation where I actually blamed God for any of this. But I didn't understand, just growing up without a protector was hard for me.
Yeah.
And so going into these situations and realizing nobody's going to bail me out, it's all you, was maybe even harder. But just going to God, I found places and God just brought me people because of my desire to be close, honestly. And just that I'm going to turn this all over. Like God's got to make this right. I know he'll do it. And I think that faith, just believing that God has something better for me.
Yeah.
And that's hard when you've been cut so low.
Yeah.
When you feel like you're nothing and you feel like you're not good enough and you don't know how to get out. The depression and the anxiety and everything you feel, I just know that in 5 minutes in God's presence, I didn't feel that.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, how can I keep getting more? How can I keep diving in and journaling? One thing God told me and revealed to me is like, you can write your way out of any story. Just write your way out. He's like, tell them how this ends. And I took that power back. I remember God really showing me how to go through the throne room of heaven. And that's probably it for me. Like throne room of heaven, that seals the deal for me every time. Is I literally, as weird as this is going to sound, this is what's helped me heal. Is I have this chair. It's a floral chair. It's my throne. It's like exactly what I would want a throne to look like.
Chair. I'm gonna go get
and
one.
I had my prayer pillow on it that I was
have a sanctuary. It's at the park.
What?
I have a sanctuary. It's at the park by my house.
Yeah. And
it was here, so I had to escape to my sanctuary.
Yeah.
You just have to have a safe place.
You need a safe place. And whether it's a prayer closet or a chair, for me, this is where I go every morning to make decisions. This is how I tell literally the devil how my day is going to go, what God's going to do, and what I'm not going to let him do. I declare it from a place of authority. And I think that's the really big thing when you're abused and you don't know who you are. God wants to give you your authority back.
Right.
Because the devil took that from you.
Yes.
Right.
And God wants to give it back to you.
Yes.
And I think for me, healing in this throne room chair and just with people that genuinely were after the heart of God. I'm not talking about mediocre Christians that want you to go on dating apps or, hook you up with somebody else or like, I'll set you up on a blind date. No. I'm talking about people that are just going to lead you back to Christ.
Yes.
And let God do what only he can do. Because when you try to go do it again, you're now taking control.
Right.
And the control goes to God. And so I think I can tell you in every situation I was ever in, there was some point where I made a decision, right or wrong. And it doesn't mean you get abused because of the decision you make. But I knew that I wasn't supposed to marry my second husband, and I did. And I hoped it would turn out. And not that God can't change and heal that, but it didn't. Mm-hmm. There's decisions you make. And I know for me this time, I'm like, God, it's just what you want. And I think that's a hard attitude as well. I had to be real with myself of knowing I didn't have control as a little girl. And I wanted to control now. And that control was only leading me to really controlling people that were abusing me. So I really wasn't getting what I wanted anyways. I think part of this healing is finding out what are the root issues that have brought you here. And it's going all the way back to when you're 5 and walking it out and really getting those layers off. If you don't, you don't heal. Right. You've just healed from one relationship. What about the 20 before?
Good.
And so you have to go that far back.
Yeah, that's good. So what are some of the positive things you can look back on and say you're grateful for since surviving some of the traumatic events that you've been through?
Wow. I am amazed at who God has made me to be and is still making me to be. I think I never, ever, ever wanted to have kids when I was little. And I've been blessed with 3 amazing kids. And I think just watching how much power God has and accessing that, I think that has to be the thing I'm most grateful for. I just didn't know he was that powerful. I heard it, but I'd never seen it. And I think I have just seen miracle after miracle. And knowing that my girls are just amazing, strong women of faith it's got to be the biggest blessing. Knowing that I broke a generational curse.
Right.
And that I get to leave a completely different legacy was an opportunity for me to change something and change the direction of a lot of people's lives. And I think when you're in the abuse, you don't look at it like that. But I feel honored that I got to be the one to break it because nobody else did it before me. And it's unfortunate it happened, but gosh, I just feel like I swallowed up all the devil's power.
Yes.
Knowing I was willing to do something nobody before me was going to do. And I think you feel like you're in better company, right? I'm reminded of David and Joseph and Moses and people that really had went through a lot. And God turned everything for them because of decision they made to be the last one that endured that cycle. And you just feel like, I get it. Like I'd rather be in their company and have them be my family and them be my backup than anyone else. So it's a decision. It's a hard decision of weighing out. You don't know everything that God has up in front of you, but I think most grateful just God showing off because I showed up.
Yeah.
And that's got to be the biggest thing for me is watching everything he does and just how many things he's gotten me out of that I didn't know I was walking into a trap or I didn't know that person didn't mean good for me, but God got me out anyways. It's a miracle. And so it's a perspective shift of you're either going to look at the abuse or you're going to look at all the miracles and you're going to look at what God did in spite of what somebody else did against you. Yeah. And he does turn everything. So
and God, for me, was very validating. Like when church people would be telling me things, God overrided that. Like that's not, he validated. Like here's truth. That wasn't truth, and I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. That's so good.
Can you tell us a little about your life now to encourage our listeners that you can thrive after abuse? What's going on in your life now? That's awesome.
Yeah, I think I mean, there's always the reality of it can feel a little weighty. There's always that of raising kids on your own and just the day to day. But I think it's when you really keep your eyes focused on Christ, I can honestly say that's not something I think about. It's only something I think about when I look around and I'm like, oh, they have an amazing spouse. That would be so nice. God just keeps opening door after door for me. And I think with finances or nonprofits I'm working on, or just having a prayer ministry and prophetic ministry, it's amazing. I can tell you that taking that abused little girl that didn't know who she was into a woman of God that has authority only God can do that. So I think that every day is a new day. And I just don't allow the same people to affect me. You have to know when to cut people off. I think that's hard for me because I really do love deep for people, but knowing that not everybody was meant to ride or die with me. Some people that really are dead weight.
Yeah.
And you got to let that go. That's been maybe the toughest part.
It is hard,
but it's also the best part, right? Is realizing you weren't meant to carry other people and you're not meant to save other people. Only God does that.
Right.
Exactly. You're just here to be a beacon of light. I think maybe that's the best part. It's just the relief of, I don't have to have it figured all out. God has a plan. and he has a way, and he just keeps working. And it was not meant to be a weight I carried. That's got to be the biggest relief I wake up with every day of, I don't have to figure this out today. God's got it handled.
Right. We trust him. He's got our backs.
Yeah.
Well, that is amazing. And we just thank you so much for being on our podcast. And we do appreciate your willingness to speak up and have a voice.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Your story is so inspiring. You've inspired me today. So thank you so much for living out everything you've been through and helping others and just being that inspiration and that example.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me on. It's great to share and just encourage other people to take their voice back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And walk that out, because there's the authorities in your voice and your story.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the podcast too. We just want to be able to give people a voice, and we just appreciate you just having the courage and strength to share some of your story with others.
Yeah, to give others hope. That's what we're all about.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening, and until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.